Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going way beyond just a societal problem. We're actually talking about, well, a biological defense mechanism. We're going deep on what we're calling the ultimate information crisis and how it can, physically break your brain's ability to function. I mean, when you look at the source material, the stakes are just cosmic. You've got the World Economic Forum classifying disinformation as a greater global risk right now than climate catastrophe.
Which is just a staggering thing to hear.
It is. And the why is because the loss of trust is it's tearing apart not just our social fabric, but our very ability to plan for the future. So our mission today is to connect two massive worlds. First, the technological response, how we verify deepfakes and all that. And second, the physiological cost to you.
We're basically bridging the gap between technical standards and what one of our sources calls the biological crisis of prediction happening inside the human nervous system. And we have to make that link. I mean, trust isn't this gentle philosophical idea anymore. It's become a fundamental existential and neurophysiological imperative. If we can't trust what we perceive, our internal predictive engine it starts to fail.
Okay, so let's start with the external fix. We have this huge problem where anything you see or hear could be fake. The only way out, technologically, is to build an external architecture of trust.
And that trust has to be cryptographically proven. This is where we get to data provenance.
Right, provenance. And the big player here is C2PA, the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity.
You should think of it as like a mandatory ingredient list for media. It gives you this transparent, verifiable history of an asset, and it makes that history totally tamper-proof.
So how does it actually work? It starts with assertions, which are just facts, right? This was shot on a Canon camera, or this was edited by this news agency.
Simple facts, but they're useless if you can just strip them out. That's why you have what's called hard binding. The system takes a cryptographic hash of the content, I mean the exact pixels, the specific frames, and it links that hash to the assertions.
So if I try to say deepfake a video, or even just crop a photo,
the content changes, the hash changes, and that cryptographic signature is instantly invalidated. It's an immediate red flag. The integrity check fails.
And all of those steps, the original shot, the edit, everything, they're tracked in the manifest store. It's like the file's family tree.
It is. And the foundational shift here is that you're no longer asked to trust the pixels themselves. You're asked to trust the verified identity of the signer, the journalist, the organization, through a system called public key infrastructure.
But this idea of verifying identity isn't just for photos, is it? It feels like a much bigger shift in security philosophy.
Oh, it is. You see the exact same logic in corporate and government security with something called zero trust architecture.
The name sounds pretty intense.
The core idea is radical. Never trust, always verify. You can't just assume a device is safe because it's inside your company's firewall anymore.
Wait, so you can't even trust your own office network? Doesn't that grind everything to a halt?
Well, there's friction, but it's necessary friction. Zero trust demands continuous verification. Trust is dynamic. It's constantly recalculated based on who you are, the health of your device, and the context.
And it also minimizes privileges, right?
That's the key. So if a hacker gets in, they can only access the bare minimum they need for one task. They can't move sideways across the whole network. It contains the damage.
Okay, so we can build this perfect digital fortress with C2PA and zero trust, but all of that falls apart if the person on the other end isn't prepared.
Exactly. The final layer of defense is you. It's cognitive security. The sources bring up the CRAP test currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, purpose. You have to be an active verifier because the biological consequences of being passive are, well, they're real and measurable.
Which is the perfect transition. Let's say the tech fails, the deepfake gets through. What happens then? We move from the external to the internal filter.
We move to a Knockins acceptor.
And this is where the information war literally goes from network protocols straight into your neurophysiology.
It does. The action result acceptor from PK and Knockins' work is this core survival mechanism that ties the quality of information directly to your biological function.
Because the brain is, above all else, a prediction machine.
That's all it does, all day. Before you take any action, stepping off a curb, signing a contract, your brain forms a very precise neural model of the expected result.
And that model is the acceptor.
That's the acceptor. It's your internal GPS, constantly checking if the world you're experiencing matches the map you built in your head.
And if it matches, great. Your brain gets a little reward, everything's fine.
But when the incoming information is false or chaotic, that's the crisis of prediction the sources mention, the acceptor you form is just wrong, you get this chronic disagreement between your map and the territory.
And that's not just an intellectual mistake, it's a physiological crisis.
Yes, your brain is forced into a state of chronic stress because it can't reliably predict the outcome of its own actions. This has clear biochemical markers.
Cortisol.
Right. The constant prediction error, the cognitive dissonance, activates the HPA axis, your central stress response. It floods your system with cortisol. And the research is clear. Chronic high cortisol is toxic to your hippocampus.
The memory and learning center of your brain.
Exactly. And it suppresses your immune system. The sources call it an increase in frequency of glucocorticoid cycles. You're paying a biological price for bad information.
But the flip side is also true, right? Predictable, trusted information promotes oxytocin.
Yes, the trust hormone. It actively counteracts cortisol. This is why stable, reliable social bonds, social buffering, are so important for our health. Your neurochemistry literally reflects your information diet.
So this gets even worse when it becomes a chronic pattern. This sustained high cortisol environment leads to some really devastating long-term costs.
Now, one of the biggest casualties here is something called the default mode network, or DMN.
Okay, so what is the DMN?
The DMN is the brain network that kicks in when you're not focused on an external task. It's responsible for deep synthesis, self-reflection, complex planning, and what we call theory of mind.
Your ability to understand what other people are thinking and feeling?
Precisely. And the threat to it is digital noise. The sources are very clear that the constant stream of short, bright, stimulating content from endless scrolling actively suppresses the DMN.
So your brain gets stuck just reacting to things in the, what is it, the salience network?
Yes, the salience network. You're just reacting, you're not synthesizing, you never get that quiet time for reflection, and so you start to lose the capacity for complex long-term thinking. The sources call it chronic fatigue of the default system.
And this fatigue shows up in some really specific ways. The first is informational pseudo-debility.
Which sounds scary, but it's a functional state, not a clinical one. It's a simplification of your thinking. If you only ever consume information fast food, headlines, bullet points, you stop forming the complex neural connections you need for systemic thought.
You lose the ability to handle nuance. It's what one of our sources calls the accumulation of bad associative neural connections. Your brain just takes the easy path.
And the second state is what's being called functional digital autism. Because you're replacing complex real-world interactions with simple digital ones, the brain networks for empathy and social communication literally atrophy.
So you start reducing other people to just flat functions, digital avatars.
And that directly correlates to a critical reduction of healthy relationships. If your DMN, which you need for theory of mind, is always suppressed, you lose the mental machinery to build a complex model of another human being. It makes real social connection incredibly difficult.
So this whole journey, from a cryptographic hash all the way to the degeneration of your cortex, is synthesized in this high-level framework called Visio and 3X.
And they treat information not as data, but as a vector force that determines the path of human evolution.
It's a heavy concept.
It is. They argue this crisis of prediction is an existential threat. When words lose their connection to reality, you get a disruption of linguistic and tactile neural networks.
And the ultimate consequence, I mean, they frame it as a metaphor, but it's a terrifying one, is the potential for a critical reduction of the DNA chain.
The idea being that the system, unable to cope with the chaos, regresses to a more primitive survival state. It sacrifices complex development just to hang on.
So how do you reverse that? They talk about reestablishing anchors of absolute trust.
Right. And they give us three powerful concepts for this. The first is Nocta Aga. This is the absolute coordinate, the singularity of truth. Think of it as the ultimate root certificate authority, the fixed point of origin. Without it, prediction is impossible.
Okay, so you have the source of truth, but you also need something to protect it.
That's the second concept, Ishua Khan. This is the dynamic force of governance. If Nocta Aga is the static truth, Ishua Khan is the active principle that defends its integrity.
And the goal of all this is what they call Tazak.
Pure dust, the state of pristine, noise-free, sanitized information that you need to build the future. It's the end goal of the purification process.
So if you pull all of this together, C2PA, Anokin, and Visio, you get a full definition of trusted content.
You do. It's information with confirmed provenance and integrity that, when your action result acceptor perceives it, causes no prediction error, no stress.
By preventing that error, you guarantee that results are repeatable and you stop that neurological and social chaos. You're literally connecting the quality of a crypto hash to the health of your own brain.
It's an unbroken chain.
So, our deep dive today has connected these three critical layers of verification, the technical, with C2PA and zero trust,
The cognitive, looking at the DMN and the acceptor.
and what we might call the axiomatic, with Nokta Aga, the imperative for a root of trust.
And the big takeaway is that digital hygiene and critical thinking aren't just good habits anymore. They're a literal biological defense mechanism against chronic stress and these really debilitating cognitive states.
The choices you make about the information you consume directly impact your physiological state. By choosing verified sources, content that's been cleaned to that state of Tazak, you are protecting your hippocampus. You're lowering your stress response.
And you're enabling the complex life-enhancing functions of your default mode network. Which brings us to a final provocative thought.
Go on.
Trusted content acts as a non-entropic factor, a negentropic force. By demanding and consuming information with the highest integrity, you are actively decreasing chaos. You're moving your own biological system and society out of that survival mode.
Away from that destructive DNA contraction.
And into a mode of complex development and evolution, which these sources ultimately just call life.
The battle for verified information, then, isn't just about politics or technology.
It's the essential condition for the survival of the species. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.